You have always believed you were from Earth. You were born here. You breathe this air. You drink this water. You grew up walking on this ground. You believe Earth is where humanity began. Every history class, every science lesson, every map, every nation, every language, every religion, every story of civilization tells you the same thing. We belong here. But what if one day scientists found a piece of evidence that could not be explained? Not a movie, not a myth, not a conspiracy theory, but a real clue pointing toward a much more disturbing question. What if the origin of humanity does not fully belong to Earth? What if we did not begin here, but arrived here long ago as the remains of some other civilization? What if we are not looking at the stars for the first time, but in some strange way, trying to remember where we came from? Then what do we do? This is not really a question about aliens. It is a question about identity. Because if humanity really were an extraterrestrial civilization, the first thing to collapse would not be science. It would be our certainty about who we are. Imagine this. One day, a laboratory announces a discovery. It does not directly prove that humans came from space. But it is strange enough. Strange enough that anthropologists, astronomers, biologists, and historians all have to sit down again and ask one question. Maybe the human story is not as simple as we thought. At that moment, the world would not explode. Cities would not stop running. Coffee shops would still open. Subways would still be crowded. Your boss might still ask when that file will be ready. That is the absurd part. A cosmic identity crisis could happen. And you would still have to go to work. But inside the human mind, something would begin to loosen. If we are not purely an Earth-born civilization, then what does evolution mean? If Earth is not our only starting point, then what does home mean? If our ancient myths, star worship, and creation stories contain some kind of lost memory, what do we do with that? The most frightening thing is not where we came from. The most frightening thing is suddenly not knowing whether here is still home. The first thing that would happen is the collapse of certainty. Humans depend on origin stories. Every civilization needs to answer 3 questions. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? Science has given us one version. We evolved from life on Earth. From ocean to land, from primates to Homo sapiens, from stone tools to cities, from fire to rockets. That story is already enormous. But what if one day we discovered that behind that story, there was another older layer? Maybe humans were not aliens dropped onto Earth in a spaceship. That sounds too much like a movie. But maybe some of the seeds of life came from the cosmos. Maybe some extraterrestrial civilization influenced the development of life on Earth. Or, in a more extreme version, maybe human civilization is descended from a lost interstellar civilization. And we simply forgot. To be clear, these are not conclusions. They are thought experiments. But even the possibility is enough to change our psychological position. Because humans have always imagined themselves standing at the center of Earth's story. Now, that center might disappear. We might be only one paragraph in a much larger cosmic story. Not the beginning, not the ending, just a forgotten middle chapter. So, if we really came from somewhere else, why would we forget? That may be the most fascinating part of the question. One possibility is that we are migrants with amnesia. Long ago, some civilization arrived on Earth. Maybe not an entire empire. Maybe only a small group of survivors. They came here, built an outpost, and had descendants. But then, a technological break happened. A disaster. Time. War. Environmental collapse. or some cause we cannot even imagine. Their knowledge system vanished. Hundreds of generations passed. Thousands of generations passed. Spaceships became legends. Star maps became myths. History became ritual. The idea that the ancestors came from the sky slowly turned from memory into story, then from story into religion, symbols, constellations, and creation myths. Eventually, their descendants, us, woke up on Earth, looking at the stars, but no longer knowing why we always wanted to look there. Another possibility is colder. Maybe we are not migrants. Maybe we are an abandoned colony. Maybe Earth was once the edge of a larger civilization, an experimental zone, a refuge, a failed outpost. The parent civilization left, or collapsed, or never came back. The loneliest idea is not that we came from the stars. It is that if we did come from the stars, there may be no one left to answer us. There is also a version closer to scientific imagination, panspermia, the idea that the basic ingredients of life, or even microorganisms, may travel between worlds through meteorites, asteroids, or cosmic dust. This does not mean humans are aliens. It does not say someone placed us here. It simply suggests that the seeds of life may not belong to only one planet. If that is true, then humans did not arrive on Earth in a spaceship. We are more like a seed scattered by the universe, growing into humanity in the soil of Earth. That is almost more stunning than science fiction, because it means we are not a boundary between Earth and the cosmos. We are already part of the cosmos. The carbon, oxygen, iron, and calcium in your body came from the deaths of ancient stars. The elements moving through your blood were once forged inside stars. From that perspective, humanity was never simply from Earth or from outside Earth. We are star matter temporarily arranged into living beings. And later, we gave ourselves a name: human. So if any of this were true, what could we do? The first thing is not to panic. It is to stop seeing ourselves as the center. If humanity really has some connection to extraterrestrial origins, then humanity is not the endpoint of the universe. We are not the only important story, maybe not the only intelligence, maybe not the only civilization. We may simply be one result of a much larger process. That makes many people uncomfortable, because humans like being the main character. We like believing that the meaning of the universe eventually points back to us. But maybe the first step toward maturity is admitting this. The universe is not a stage built for humanity. Earth is not a room specially prepared for us by the cosmos. We simply woke up here and then began explaining it. That does not make humanity smaller. In a strange way, it makes us more precious. Because if the universe is this vast, cold, and silent, and we still woke up inside it, able to ask, "Who am I?" that alone is astonishing. The second thing is to redefine home. If we came from somewhere else, is Earth still home? Of course it is, because home does not have to be where you began. Home can be where you were raised, where you first learned language, where you first feared death, where you first loved someone, where you buried your ancestors, and where you may one day be buried too. Even if humanity had some kind of cosmic origin, Earth would still be the place where we first learned how to be human. Here, we learned fire, tools, stories, cave paintings, music, agriculture, cities, war, philosophy, science. Here we cried. Here we laughed. Here we made mistakes. And here again and again we began over. So if we came from the stars, that does not make Earth less important. It makes Earth more important, because it may not be our first stop, but it is where we woke up. You do not need to be born in a place to have the right to protect it. You only need to have lived there, loved there, and remembered there. Earth is home, not because it must be the beginning, but because it holds everything humanity became after waking up. The third thing is to search for lost memory. If humanity really is connected to an extraterrestrial civilization, the stupidest reaction would be immediate worship. The second stupidest reaction would be immediate denial. The more mature response is to keep searching. Search downward, into our genes, into evolutionary history, into the earliest traces of life on Earth, into organic molecules inside meteorites, into the possible pathways by which life can emerge. Search upward, toward Mars, Europa, Enceladus, exoplanets, atmospheres with possible signs of life, signals from deep space. Search backward, into myth, ancient star maps, old structures, astronomical traditions, not to prove that every ancient story was about aliens. That would be too cheap. But to understand something deeper, why does almost every civilization look upward? Why do humans keep placing gods in the sky? Why do we instinctively feel that answers might be above us? Maybe it is only because the sky is vast, mysterious, and unreachable. Maybe there is another reason. We do not know. But not knowing is not failure. Not knowing is where science and myth both begin. The fourth thing is to prepare to leave Earth again. If we were originally an extraterrestrial civilization, then space exploration would take on a completely different meaning. It would not only be expansion, not only resource hunting, not only a technological race. It might feel like a return impulse. Of course, we should not romanticize space. Space is not heaven. It is cold, airless, radioactive, and extremely hostile to the human body. If you think life on Earth is stressful, Mars will not cure your anxiety. Mars is just anxiety with no oxygen. And yet, humans will keep looking there. The moon landing, Mars missions, deep space telescopes, the search for exoplanets, the question of whether life can exist elsewhere. On the surface, these are scientific projects. But deep in the human mind, they may also feel like something older. We want to know, is anyone there? Is our past there? Is our future there? We think we are going into the universe for the first time. But what if we came from there? Then this is not departure. This is return. So let us return to the original question. If we were an extraterrestrial civilization all along, what can we do? First, do not panic. Because wherever we came from, we have lived here for a very long time. We have made Earth home. Second, do not become arrogant, because if humanity is only one part of a cosmic story, we have no right to imagine ourselves as the endpoint. Third, do not abandon Earth, because even if we came from the stars, Earth is where we woke up. Fourth, keep searching. Downward, into our genes and history. Upward, into the stars and the future. Inward, into the strange feeling that maybe we do not belong only here. Maybe one day we will discover that humanity was never just a species trapped on Earth. Maybe humanity is the universe's child, temporarily forgetting where it came from. And maybe all of our science, myths, music, religion, rockets, and telescopes have been doing the same thing all along, trying to remember. So the real question may not be, are we from another world? The real question is, if we really came from the stars, what are we going to become? A forgetful civilization that destroys its second home? Or a cosmic species that finally remembers its responsibility? Maybe the answer is not in the past, not in a lost spacecraft, not in an ancient ruin. Maybe the answer is in what we do next, how we treat Earth, how we treat each other, how we treat the darkness we keep staring into. Because wherever we came from, the next chapter has not been written yet. And this time, we are holding the pen.